I'll call to order the April Finance Committee. Welcome everybody here this afternoon. I don't know if you wanted to say an introductory comment or just saying hello. Okay. Glad to have the mayor here today. As always, we will begin with the consent agenda. Are there any items anyone would want pulled off the consent? Ms. Burke, you look like it. C7. We have C7. Do I have any others?
C3.
C3.
Move approval for the balance.
We have a motion and a second to approve the balance of the consent except for C3 and 7. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Those are approved. We will start with C3.
C3, review of the Recreation and Parks Department user fees.
Mr. Montgomery, I think. Who could come talk? Ben, you want to come up or speak from there? That's fine.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clark, Mayor Joins, members of the City Council.
Good afternoon.
A few years ago, the I can't remember the name of that. The co-work, the citizen committee that was appointed to do a comprehensive review of city operations. One of their recommendations was for the city to conduct on an annual basis a review of select user fees. This year, the Budget and Evaluation Office looked at recreation and parks user fees. So the report that you have in your agenda book today is that report. It lays out several recommendations for adjustments to user fees, in particular increasing the soccer field rental fees by $10 for both tournament and non-tournament field rentals, reviewing the picnic shelter rental fee structure, whereby we would distinguish between smaller shelters and larger shelters, something similar to what we've seen in other cities that we compare ourselves to. Thirdly, look at a sliding fee schedule for non-residents who use our facilities. We saw an example with the city of Durham that we think would be worth looking at more closely and perhaps look at ways we could perhaps copy their fee structure there. And then finally, looking at making regular adjustments to the fees based on the Consumer Price Index in order to kind of stabilize our cost recovery, make sure we do achieve a certain level of cost recovery for our recreation and park services and programs. So those are and also to keep our fees in line with what other cities are charging.
Okay. Yes, sir.
And I asked for that to be pulled just because of understanding our parks and recreations and understand we want to make sure that we are recovering certain amount of dollars back into parks and recreation, but also understanding that parks and recs is a service that we provide. And so understanding, making sure that anything that we do when we adjust those, making sure that we are not keeping individuals from having access to certain facilities. We want to make sure all of our young people, all of our individuals who use our facilities, whether young, old, or seasoned, no matter where they fall, can still have access. And so just want to make sure, even though when we look at some of these numbers, we're actually on the lower end of many of the cities, we want to make sure that I don't think this is one where we want to try to be at the top when it comes to some of the user fees. This is one I think we want to try to make the adjustments when it comes. I think the CPI is one to look at, but beyond that, I would struggle to see how we move some of those higher than what they are now.
Okay, this is just information only today.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other comments, Ms. Adams?
Yes, I would just like to say the one thing that I admire that staff has done and the co-work that we task with doing this on a continuing basis for us, so that we would know where we need to look to be able to not just improve services, but what costs are coming in and how we benchmark up against the other cities such as High Point, Greensboro, Raleigh, Durham. And as the report said, we're much lower than the others. And I just think that, as Councilmember Montgomery said, yes, recreation and parks is a service, so the fees are what we use to recoup some of those costs. And that's all it is. It's like apples to apples. So, I hope the citizens understand that, again, the way the world works and cost of things go up, that we will always try to keep these certain amenities as low as we can keep them for the citizens of Winston-Salem.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I believe that we can say that we have truly been very progressive and forward with providing services in recreation and parks. And the facilities are used well, but we have also been encouraging more use of it by the citizens. We were in Charlotte some years ago, Mr. Page and I, and did Richard? No, he didn't go. It was Chris Mack. Oh, Mr. Grant, yes. And we looked at how they charge. They do a very strange way in how they charge people when they come to use their facilities. They use this little band, and they can determine if you've been in. And one of the things that we saw was babies sitting with their mothers, and they were having musical appreciation, and parents paid for that. And they had some facilities there that was just really, really wonderful to look at. And then when we left, I said, we do a good job in Winston-Salem, and I hope we continue to do what we're doing to provide that kind of service. But citizens also have to keep in mind, and I want them to understand this, when you want a service, there is a fee.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
Do we charge the same fee for city residents versus non-city residents? If somebody's coming in from out of town to do a tournament, do they pay what a city resident pays?
Yes.
They do. Okay. Is it practical to think about a change in that policy?
Well, one of the recommendations is to look at something similar to what the city of Durham has done, where it's a kind of a sliding fee schedule. So going forward, we may look more in depth about how they actually implemented that fee schedule.
How elastic are prices? Does a small raise in price cause a big drop off in participation? We know.
I'm not sure. I would say that probably for some of those smaller fees like pool entry fees, there could be some high elasticity there. Okay. And that's part of the reason why you'd have, I think, the sliding scale, that the increases would not be as significant for those types of facilities.
Thank you.
Any other comments back to staff on this? Okay, you've heard some comments. I think what I'm hearing is trying to balance the need to recoup some money, at the same time being sure they're still reasonable to rent. How do you balance it? Okay. The other one, there's no action required on that. The other one is C7. Secretary, will read that, please.
Item C7, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Pride Eco Adventures to purchase 2 Winston-Salem trolley buses.
I asked for that.
Yeah, Mr. Turner, could you introduce this so everybody knows what's going on?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. City Council some time ago authorized staff to solicit proposals from potential companies who would be interested in buying 2 surplus city trolley buses. And the intent of the proposals or the intent of the RFP was to ask for firms that would be interested in running these services or running these vehicles for tourism services in Winston-Salem. We did that, got 3 proposals, looked at each of them, and came back with a recommendation that Triad Eco Adventures was the best proposal in satisfying the direction of council for the conditions of the sale. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Burke, sure.
Now, explain, are we saying we're going to buy 2 trolleys?
No, ma'am, we're going to sell to them 2 of our surplus trolleys.
So that our citizens can understand. Now, who is that called?
They currently operate the Segway vehicles, Segway tours that you see going around downtown. That's their most prominent activity that you might have seen.
If, when they operate them, are you saying they will be operating 2 trolleys?
Yes, ma'am, they'd be required to operate them for tourism activity, and there would be conditions on the sale, so that if they fail to satisfy the sale conditions, then they would have to sell them back to the city.
Okay, I was going to ask, but then what will our obligation be when they are running them? I understand. I understand. Therefore, some taxpayers may not understand.
The city would not have any obligation while they're operating them other than to confirm that they're operating them within the conditions of the sale contract.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any questions from anyone else? Do I have a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion to second on item C7. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. That is approved. We will now go to the general agenda. We have 5 items here. We will start with G1.
Item G1, consideration of items relating to permanent financing for the development of rental housing. A, resolution authorizing permanent financing for development of 50 units of rental housing known as Emmanuel Retirement Village. B, ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for the City of Winston-Salem, North Carolina for the fiscal year 2015-2016.
Okay, if y'all can remember last month, Mr. Brooks, come on up. This was in here just for informational purposes, and we did receive both in the packet as well as previous to that some information. So, Mr. Brooks, why don't you kind of reintroduce it, and then we'll see what questions folks may have.
Yes, this particular item, as it was just, I'm sorry. Good afternoon, Chairman, members, Mayor.
Afternoon.
This particular item was presented last month for information. It is a request for permanent financing of $2.5 million for the development of a 50-unit senior housing development known as Emmanuel Retirement Village. It's located off of Barbara Jane Avenue, and it will consist of 28 one-bedroom units and 11 duplexes, 28 one-bedroom units and 11 duplex structures containing 22 two-bedroom units. This particular item did receive several questions, and we have provided answers to those questions that was presented. I think one of the primary concerns that we mentioned was a lack of working capital. We didn't provide that information earlier, but today that's been provided for you. And essentially what the developer is proposing to do is increase, during construction, increase the contingency from 1% to 3% by including funds from the builder's contingency and some other funds, and the developer's fee, which is approximately $150,000, they are proposing to use a portion of that as working capital. They have also indicated receiving approximately 29 commitment letters from individuals that they have to confirm are still interested, and they're in the process of doing that. So they have made an attempt to address that concern and the other concerns, and the consultant for that project, Mr. Larry Weston, is here to just share with you a little more in detail about how they intend to do that and respond to other questions that you may have regarding the project.
Mr. Weston, if you come up, please, sir. And if you'll give your name and address for the record.
Larry Weston. I'm at 1383 Glenwood Road in Kernersville.
Thank you, sir.
It's a pleasure to be here today, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, and members of the committee. Do you have in front of you a copy of the spreadsheet that we provided showing a working capital plan?
Yes, sir.
I think that's the primary.
We've got a lot of pieces of paper. I think we've got.
Think you have that one too?
Yes, sir. We were just given that. We do have it. Let me just.
I'll be glad to put it.
It looks like. Yeah, you can put it on the screen if you'd like. Somebody get that machine working. Here we go. You got it working.
I'll give you just a moment to take a look at it, and then I'll speak to it.
You must have come early to check the machine, because most people don't get it that quick.
Pardon me?
Most people don't get the machine working that quick. You must have done something.
I used to work for the city, and I had to do it all the time. I had to do it all the time. You'll note from the spreadsheet that what we have looked to do, as Mr. Brooks pointed out, is to increase the amount of the contingency from 1% to 3%. And in our discussions with the city, it was felt that that would be a minimum that we could provide. We will make every effort to in the course of the construction, to make sure that more contingency funds are available, and we think they would be, but this would meet the minimum requirement. And we've placed them on a schedule so that all of these fees would be available during the construction period. We expect a construction period of from 12 months to 15 months. And so all of these funds would be available during that period. They would include, first of all, the builder's contingency, sales tax refund, which is something that wasn't mentioned before. By virtue of its status as a nonprofit developer with a 501c3 status, construction costs for which sales tax would be charged we will be eligible for a refund on that. We've asked our builder for an estimate. He's given us an estimate. He's given us an estimate of about $50,000 in sales tax refund. We have included most of that here as in item 2, 3, and 5. We've included $30,000 of that already, and then we expect that the Ujima CDC would continue to do its special events and other kinds of fundraising to make sure that we supplement the amount as well. And we have offered to make sure that at least half of our development fee that is built into the financing would be made available for this contingency fund as well. So between those among those 8 items, we expect that there would be a minimum of $150,000 in working capital available during the course of construction, and we think significantly more than that will be available.
Thank you. Anything else you want to comment on?
Well, there are a lot of things I could comment on. I would like to say,
Go ahead.
I would like to take a moment just to say that this is not your everyday, typical project, housing project that you see brought before you. This was not done with a large developer. This was done with the CDC acting as its own developer. We have assembled a very competent team of technicians to assist us through this. And so while this is the first project that you will see from the CDC, I promise you it will not be the last project. And we hope that because we think it will have a generative effect in that neighborhood, that it can stimulate other development. We're already planning to work with businesses in the area through a RUCA grant that was made at the CDC's urging. And so we think that this is a very unique project and one that may even set a standard. We call it a game changer because we think it'll set a standard for how projects that don't rely on federal funds, that don't rely on state funds, state tax credits. Most of the deals that you will see come before you will start with, we've got tax credits and this is how we're going to do it. No tax credits are involved, no federal subsidies involved. There's an internal subsidy that is provided because of the city's participation in this in the financing. And so it is, in our view, a unique project, one that's been a long time coming. This group has worked on this project for the last 11 years. And so it's 11 years worth of hard work and determination and creativity and innovation that has brought us to this night. And so with that, I would be willing to answer any other questions you might have.
I'll just go around. I see Mr. Taylor's hand up first. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Weston. Looking at items 6 and 7, it looks like the Community Development Corporation has indicated that it's looking to raise approximately $15,000 in fundraising efforts. Mm-hmm. I know at the last meeting, Mr. Jones was available from the church, which we know is separate from the Community Development Corporation. Mm-hmm. So I'd just like you to briefly talk about what your fundraising methods might be. Would it include fundraising from the church entity itself, or do you have some other innovative opportunities for fundraising?
We have, if we look at our history, the group over the past several years has done a number of different kinds of fundraising activities. We've had bingo nights. We've had about 6 or 7 bingo nights, as an example. We have sponsored a trip to New York City in which we went to see a Broadway play. And there'll be other activities of that type, banquets, other kinds of activities. We think that during the course of the year we ought to be able to, and particularly with some lead time for planning. And that's why we put it more toward the end, because it'll give us more time to do some real planning and work. But there'll be a number of those kinds of activities that are CDC sponsored. And while there may be church members that will participate, we will not expect the church to raise those funds for us. Those will be the CDC's funds that will be raised.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Good, thank you. Larry, Mr. Brooks mentioned that there were 29 letters of interest from potential tenants there. how would you characterize them in terms of their seriousness, and will you have to have, I guess, firm letters or maybe even signed leases to get the rest of the financing in place?
Well, I would characterize the folks that have asked about units so far as being rabid. 2 years ago, we began to collect letters of interest before we were even close to getting the financing in place. And people were very interested at that point, and now harass our board members every Sunday about when's the project going to be here. A number of people in the church have. A number of those 29 persons are members of the church, though not exclusively that. Our intention is to go back now and to go back down that list of people that have already expressed a specific interest and have signed a letter saying so, to make sure that they are reconfirmed. Then shortly after that, as soon as our financing is in place and we've closed on a loan and we've got a firm projected date for a construction start, we will go back and collect deposits, actual deposits, in the form of a unit reservation fee for anyone who might be interested. From that group, we will then go back and go through the application process and select folks and have pre-leases in place. But we will first look to get deposits in the amount of $750 for each person interested. The bank has only asked us that we provide 75% of the units in terms of that deposit, which is 37 units. We expect to have at least 37 units by the time we get to closing, and before a construction is done, we expect to have 150% of the units spoken for. We expect to have a waiting list.
Thank you. I have some questions. Does anyone else want to ask questions?
Comments or questions?
Whatever you can have your day in court here.
Thank you. Again, I think all of the council knows I'm an advocate for this project. Again, we have seen, if we look at the data and the matrix that staff has provided for us, and the maps of locations of senior assisted living or independent living facilities here in the city, we don't have a lot located in the urban core. And the one thing that we do know is a fact is that probably in the next 5-10 years, again, boomers will continue to be a growing part of the community. A lot of the people, after they get to 60 and above, and if it's not health issues, it's the fact that we see it all over. Older people, once they have had the big house and the big lawn and the upkeep, you can no longer do that. And because of the fixed income that you now fall into, you can't do that. You have to move somewhere where you only have to pay rent and utilities and medical bills or whatever. We have not seen a project like this, but that doesn't mean that the project can't be done. I want my council members to understand that we have done some other innovative things over the years, whether it's with Restaurant Row, and we can count how many restaurants didn't make it and businesses, and we had to, eat those costs. But the point is, we have never backed away from, I'll say this city as being progressive and innovative when it comes to people wanting to do something different that we've never seen. I know some people would say maybe the numbers don't work. Well, I don't want us to fall into that category like how we now still have the issue of trying to convince grocery stores to come into the urban core because their numbers don't work. But you still got people that have to eat. You still have older citizens that have to live somewhere when they can no longer live in their homes anymore. I also want you to understand that it is a proven fact that when people get seasoned and they need to move somewhere, it usually doesn't benefit them to move out of the communities that they've come to love and that they've lived in for 30, 40, 50 years. They want to be around their churches. They want to be around their communities and the organizations and groups that they're familiar with to help them live a quality of life. Again, I believe that, again, if we looked at other data and instances, examples that we have, we will find other projects that maybe don't, as they say, sound like a duck, look like a duck, but at the end it was a duck, maybe even a swan. And I'd like for us to consider that in voting for this project. Again, if urban core communities are to have a chance, we have to take a chance. These people, these seniors have worked in this city, paid taxes in this city, and now they deserve a chance to have an opportunity to receive some of the good that the city does as a whole. So I'm asking each and every one of my council members to support it, and because I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Burke.
Yes. In the last meeting, I supported the project, and I will continue to support the project. Someone asked me today if, as a senior citizen, being in the situation that I'm in successfully with my finances, would I live in East Winston or would I move to another part of this city? When you look at things that you can have that would be convenient. And I said, I will die in East of 52. I love it. You can't make me move. I am happy and pleased each and every day. The city manager and I have conversations. I just want to make sure my area is clean, that we're providing opportunities. And I said this to them today. I said, now, if you talk about today, I would enjoy where I live still, and I would leave and go to Haynes Mill because we have a lot of convenient things that's for me. Where I drive, I feel comfortable. I will find the area that's most, the appearance that I would like to look at, and I would go to Haynes Mill, and I would enjoy myself. I'm very pleased I've been a part of helping that with the city, making it a very productive place for living, residential, and businesses. So when I look here at this list, Mr. Chairman, the committee, and Mayor and others, I agree with the Councilwoman when we say there are very few areas that we would say east of 52. And I especially put them checked by Holland Homes. I don't know how they did their plan, but they have a beautiful surrounding. The people can come and go. They have facilities near them, and that's a very nice place. Then I thought about Gola Manor, what do you call it? Mm-hmm. Is it listed here anywhere?
Yeah.
And that's a very, I have a check. That's very nice. They can come and go in familiar places. And I want to ask Mr. Brooks a question. I'm looking at all of these projects, some, and you can give this to me another time, how many we put money in? And do we ever send out a survey to see how they're coming along, with how people are staying there and how they're accepting rents that they ask them? That can be at the next meeting. Mr. Chairman, I would just say that I support this project, and I agree with the Councilwoman when she says that we've tried other things, and I do have the experience of telling you some things we've tried downtown. We've lost money, but we've also not stopped giving when other folks come to us with projects. So I'm in agreement with this.
Thank you. Mr. Montgomery had a comment, question?
There's a comment. As we look at this particular neighborhood and community, as I stated on the last month, as a council member in that area, we look at the location in which the CDC is looking to make an investment, and as it was stated, right at the intersection of Barbara Jane and Old Greensboro Road is located a RUCA site in which the city has targeted to invest dollars, and you have several of those individuals who have put an application together submitted to the city. Right down the street, you have a property in Kensington Village, in which was the old Goler Apartments property, in which the city participated and assisted in seeing a redevelopment that has drastically transformed the nature of that property. Just down the road from that, you have the Commons project, which the mayor and others have worked very diligent on in terms of seeing that property transform, and we'll continue to see that property transform with more investment that's taking place there. But you step back from that and you see that within the last 4 years, we saw drastic devaluation of property. values. And what do you do when you see that happening? You make investments in those communities with an attempt of hoping to see that have impact on the community. So I think that we have the opportunity with this type of investment, the other investment that's happening there, although I disagree with the county's methodology of valuing property, I believe that being able to make investments in communities in which we've seen the value drop in property has the propensity to increase those property values surrounding it. So I think we look broader, as I tried to articulate on last month, of not just the simple impact of this development on bringing the senior housing to the community, being transformative of that nature, but the ripple effect and impact that it has on values on properties in the neighborhood, and then opportunities for additional development of other dollars that are being invested. So I think we're compounding dollars that are being invested in this neighborhood and community that will see greater impact if and when this project moves forward. And again, I say thank you to those who have worked very, very hard and have been persistent, because some would have given up on a project like this, but have been persistent to continue to move back around. I think the biggest question that was brought up from last month around the skin in the game and putting additional dollars, I think they've gone back and they've looked at ways to attempt to put more dollars up front in the project. And again, it may not be as much as we may see in some other projects, but I think they've heard the concern and they've attempted to go back and do that, and I think that will be what we'll continue to see from them moving forward.
Anyone else? Before I do have a few comments. First off, I do appreciate, Dan, go ahead.
Just an inquiry, the letter from Eugene that we received the first time is kind of confidential, stamp all that.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that's something that was intended to remain closed in the business file.
Well, it was just
It's
open.
fine. It's fine. We're a transparent organization, so it really doesn't matter.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And it's on TV.
And it's on TV.
Dan, anything else?
No, that's all.
I do have a number of questions, and these may be getting too technical at this stage, but I do appreciate the numbers. I did feel much more comfortable after seeing the numbers, so let me just walk through the questions. First one is, and by the way, I have an elderly mother who I'm dealing with the very issues we're talking about. Are you actually going to have in the deed, bylaws, or whatever, an age restriction that you have to be so old to rent here, or is that just your goal?
We intend to provide units for people who are 62 and over.
Okay.
The selection of tenants will go through a process, and if there are extenuating circumstances, I'm sure that will be taken into account. I'm not sure that we would have. I would check with our attorney to make sure that we could actually include a provision of 62.
To advertise, you have to be X to come in.
Yeah, well, we want to advertise that this is a community for seniors that are 62 and over.
Okay.
That's how we would advertise it, and that's how we would propose to run it.
If somebody comes in there 60 or 61, okay, but someone that's 27, you're probably going to say thanks. But
I say look down the street.
okay.
Or look across town.
Next question: Who currently owns the land?
The Eugene CDC.
You actually already own the land.
We actually own the land.
All right, that settles my question there.
Which is also part of the equity that we're placing in the deal.
Okay, that was not in the information anywhere. What contingencies has the bank put on the loan? I think you mentioned one. Is there anything we need to be aware of that might?
No, they've indicated very clearly what their terms would be, and are very supportive of the efforts that we've made and the pro formas that we have provided. I mean, we're still working through that till we get to an actual loan document. But other than the fact that they have indicated to us informally that they would like to see 75% of the units at least spoken for prior to closing, that's really about the only hard term.
Okay. So they are saying informally, you don't know what they're going to do formally till you get a document from them. But
well, I mean, we've got a term sheet from them that says very specifically, and I'll be glad to share that with you if you'd like. But it indicates what they'd like to do and just what they like to see, and we expect to live up to that.
Okay, so the bank in their bid letter, they would like 75% of the units to have a deposit on.
Well, no, they like to have 75% of the units spoken for by letter of interest.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
They haven't even asked for a deposit on those. We have affirmatively offered to do that so that as a show of good faith.
Okay, no problem. just curious, and again, this may be getting too technical. We're putting roughly half the money in, the bank's putting roughly half the money in. How do we coordinate the draws? Because typically in construction, you build and you draw as you go. Do we get drawn first, or they get drawn first, or do we?
We've discussed that. We discussed that at the last meeting with the city at which the bank attended, and there was a discussion about that. Would you like to speak to that, if you can recall those specific terms?
Good afternoon, Councilmember Clark and members of the committee. As Mr. Weston indicated, we did have a meeting last week with at which the bank attended. We didn't come to terms on that, but it's a piece of the conversation that we will nail down once we get a little further down the road.
Were they asking for our money up front?
They were not. They were not. They were not.
Okay.
They were not.
It would be my intent to pull them jointly. And I know bankers can be different.
Typically on these projects, our money is last in.
Okay.
And in every instance, we work hard to make certain that our money is last in.
Okay.
I wasn't at the meeting for that, but whatever agreements that we can get with the lender, it will certainly be something where we're at as little risk as possible, or the risk is a shared risk with both.
Okay.
But our preference definitely is to be further on the back end with our release of funds rather than at the beginning.
Okay, thank you. That answers that question. Last three items. We've talked about the money for we talked construction contingency. My concern is more just working capital in general, not so much doing the construction, but just ongoing. Because you never know, you may have a letter of interest, but that person may have to sell their home or get out of the lease they're in, and therefore they're not going to come tomorrow. They're going to come 4 months, whatever, later. Three things. First off, in your own analysis that you gave us, the folks that did it indicated a market rate in this area of $700 a month, and you're showing roughly $900 a month. Can you comment on that?
Well, first of all, that was a preliminary market study that was done in 2014. Based on data that was collected probably the year before. So we're probably talking, 3 years from this point?
Yeah.
We didn't believe at that point that the comparables that were chosen were adequate. We still don't think so. We looked at the list of 22 projects that are noted as independent living projects in the city, and we don't think that they're comparable. This is a different kind of project, and by the time that it's built in 2 years, in a year and a half, 2 years, the rents will, I think you'll find that the rents that we're asking that do include utilities, all utilities, will be marketable and will be comparable. We haven't gone to the we think unnecessary expense of paying another $2,000 or $5,000 to have a market consultant tell us that. We know that.
I'm not asking for that study, but it just. Oh, let me get the next one, and I'll combine the two. I did talk with several people that are in the apartment business now. They may not be in senior apartments; they're just in the apartment business. And they thought the $900 rent sounded a little high, and they also thought the vacancy rate of 5% sounded high. Or low, I should say. And my concern is this is why it gets back to working capital. It may lease up a little bit more. Basically, a 5% vacancy is almost somebody moving in the day after the person leaves. And sometimes that doesn't happen. You've got a week or two or a month, whatever. So that's why I want to be sure there's adequate working capital to if those two numbers are a little bit.
And for all of those considerations, we've offered at a minimum to raise the contingency up to 3%, and have offered to be affirmative in our efforts to make sure that it's higher than that. We have, from the very beginning of this project, heard other people in other places say that it can't work. The site's not flat enough, that it's in the wrong part of town. We weren't eligible for tax credits because there's not a grocery store nearby, because there's a food desert there. We've heard lots of questions and naysayers who have thought that this project was not at the right time and it shouldn't be there and other kinds of things. We happen to have a different view, and we've approached it differently, and we've made every effort over the last 10, 11 years to try and make sure that the numbers do work. 2 years ago, the numbers didn't work. These numbers work now in our view, and we believe very strongly. And apartment developers that you may have talked with may not have asked to get deposits prior to the close of construction from their units. They may have chosen a totally different marketing approach. So, I mean, I want to make sure that when we make comparisons that we compare apples to apples and not apples to oranges or apples to kiwi fruit.
Okay. All right. Last comment, and this is one I probably have the biggest concern. I'm just voicing those because these are not people that necessarily build new ones, they manage. And they say they run about 15% vacancy, give or take a little bit. And they thought that you could rent something for $700 all day long, not only this area but others. But anyway, I'll leave that to you. Last one, you're not getting competitive bids on the construction, from what I can tell.
That's correct.
And the general contractor is actually on your board?
No.
He's not?
No.
You've been working with him?
We've been working along with him in arm's length, but he is not a member of the board.
I would just say I have a major concern that you're not getting competitive bids, because we're spending $100,000 per apartment. And again, I've asked people what would be reasonable to build. Now, again, I haven't seen the land and whether it's flat or crooked or whatever.
Well, take my word for it, it's not flat.
Okay.
It's about a 15% grade.
Whatever. I just have concerns about that we're going to have a $5 million project, of which $2.5 million is the city, and we're not getting competitive bids.
Well, we didn't do a formal competitive bid. We did, in effect, what a competitive bid would have been. We have had intensive conversations with at least 5 general contractors. We've asked each one of them for an estimate, for their best estimate, as for what the cost would be. And this particular builder came in significantly under those. And he came in significantly under those bids because he believes in value engineering. He's done that on the last project that he worked with, along with this particular lender, as a matter of fact, he came in on time and under budget. His previous project that I'm just referencing now is very similar to this project. There's not a lot of redesign and rework that has to be done on the duplex units at any rate. And so there was some cost savings that were clear and obvious to us and that we just could not look the other way on. Now, if we'd want to add another 6 months and another how many thousands of dollars and go through a competitive bid process, I think we'd come up with the same thing. And that's what we're asking some understanding and consideration on. This project has come together, the team has come together, and it has come together in a way that I think that many will look to in the future and consider to be magical. Okay. That's part of it.
And that's not a make or break, but I did want to raise the issue.
I think it's a very legitimate issue, and I was glad to be able to speak to it.
And those are all the comments I have, questions. And wait a minute, one more. You're looking for the council to do something by end of May, because you're looking for a June 1st.
Well, we're looking for the council.
June 1st is something in here today. You're looking to do something?
We're looking for the council to act on this as soon as it can.
Okay. I just want to be sure if there was any deadlines I had to hit. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, Mr. Montgomery?
A couple. Just one in terms of looking at the rates in terms of rent rates, and that part come up. As you know, I often talk about rent rates, but because of this being inclusive in terms of utilities, I think that's the difference. And when you begin to look at some of the rents that's there. And I think it's something we still have to be very cognizant of in terms of what we're looking at and making sure that people in the neighborhood and the community are able to afford the rents, and then being able to look at what's totally entailed in what somebody's going to be paying, because paying $700 downtown and paying $700 there, paying $900 downtown, $900 somewhere else comes along with about $300, $400 additional expenses that you have along with the utilities, parking space, all that other stuff that comes along with it. So I think that's something to really compare and dice out the difference that's there. Another piece on that is in the sense of When you talk about some of the locations, some of the things that have been built, one thing I think we should be clear on is that, particularly when you think about some of the housing as well as some of the office and some of the additional things that I think goes to the point that was mentioned, is that when people have made investment in this part of the community within the last 10 years, I think we have seen and completed that investment. We have seen positive impact in terms of those things. We look at the Enterprise Center, which the city participated in. Everybody said that office in East Winston is not going to be well, and they stay full in terms of being able to lease up their space. Again, we go to show that when you make investments in places where they're depressed or not having it, people want to have that. When you look at, again, the housing development at Old Gola, now Kids in the Village, that project stays full because it provides quality housing in parts of the community that often sees lacking of quality housing. So, again, when we're questioning whether or not some of those pieces happen, what we've seen, at least in the community there, is that because there is a great absence of much of the quality that's there, it works well because people are driven to it because there's not other options that exist that provides the type of quality that's there. One other piece that I do want to mention, and I'm not sure who can answer it, to one of the points that Councilmember Clark brought up in reference to terms, and I don't know if we can put this in or if we move forward with this, but in reference to the other loan that would be a part of this from the bank, I know that in the past with other projects, if the bank has required some standard of subordination from the city, that it has had to come back to the city in terms of approval for that. And I don't know if there's a certain place that we can be able to agree upon the statement in terms of where we lie within that process that would prevent having to come back around again within the process if this was something that moved forward, or if that is something that a desire of committee to want to keep that to come back around, because we don't know what those terms are at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure how to answer that question, but I'm thinking about it. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a pinpoint. I thought that we saw that somewhere, Mr. Weston, in the presentation early on.
That, what?
About the city and the bank, where we fall, whether we're going to be subordinate.
We are subordinate.
We are subordinate. It's in there.
There is. Our resolution is fairly short. It's half a page, but it references attachment A, which is actually on page 19, and that's where all the, as the lawyers like to call it, the fine print. I put on my reading glasses to have to read it. But in there, it does say financing in the amount to be derived from general obligation bonds, but it also says they have to have bank financing and this, that, and the other.
I didn't think.
Yes, ma'am, excuse me. I interrupted Ms. Adams.
That's okay. I commend you guys on your team on making it where you have an age requirement. What we're finding in the past is when we allow young people to move in with seasoned people over 62 or whatever, it doesn't make for a good deal. I mean, we want them to get along, and yeah, young people keep us young and all of that, but there are some problems and issues and challenges for older people because we don't like noise like we used to. We want peace and quiet. We want to be able to live, again, a quality of life without fear. And unfortunately, for a lot of boomers or older adults that are moving in their life to these types of facilities, they not only do it for their quality of life, their health, but they do it also for safety, that there's someone around similar to them that they can count on when needed. I also wanted to say that, and we were talking about the rental rates, that if this is how I think I saw the 10% of the units to be set aside for 80% medium income, again, most of these people will have fixed incomes. They'll have income streams, whereas to pay, and maybe I'm wrong, but to pay $899 a month, if you worked, you got Social Security and a pension or something, you already got a budget. You've been living on a budget anyway to be able to live where you are. So I commend you on what you're doing in trying to make it work. And I really don't think you will have a problem leasing up this place. I just don't. I don't. Thank you, Chair.
Can I get a motion on this?
I move for approval.
I have a motion second. Any other comments?
Just one. I'll be supporting this on Monday.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will say I am going to vote for it tonight. I like the work you've done. I do have a few questions on staff on maybe tightening it up or getting a better understanding of the bank agreement, and maybe a copy of that to the staff would be helpful.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, likewise, that is approved. And for the folks here, the next council meeting is a week from today. Okay, we'll now go to G2.
Item G2, resolution approving the fiscal year 2017 Housing and Community Development Program and authorizing submission of the 2016-2017 annual plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Mr. Montgomery has stated he has to recuse himself from this, is that correct? But he's leaving anyway. Madam?
It's G2 and 3.
Yeah. Do I need a motion or, okay. Can I have a motion
I
that we
move
excuse
that
Mr.
we
Montgomery from G2 and
recuse
G3?
Councilmember Montgomery for G2 and G3.
I'll second. We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. So he is excused visually and legally. All right. Any questions on this one? Do I have a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. We'll now go to G3.
Item G3, resolution authorizing transfer of continuing care homeless grant, acceptance of grant funds, and execution of agreements.
I move for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Okay. G4.
Item G4, resolution giving preliminary approval to issuance of revenue bonds to finance the acquisition, rehabilitation, and equipping of an affordable housing development, Rolling Hills Apartments.
Ms. Saunders, why don't you come forward? And I must admit, and I've been sitting in this chair a while at this table for a while, I have never heard of us issuing revenue bonds for housing, so why, or whatever these are. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Good afternoon, Council. Chairman Clark and members of the committee, and Mayor, please. The attached resolution actually allows the city to issue revenue bonds. Think of it more as a pass-through of revenue bonds. The developer, Steel Properties, approached us a couple of weeks ago about doing this, and you'll notice there are a couple of projects that we did this in the early 80s and the 90s with. Yeah. But basically, they are applying to North Carolina Housing Finance Agency for a 4% tax credit, and with that, they will actually want to authorize bonds. It's a short-term financing until they actually take out a permanent loan with HUD. It's not a debt of the city. It's not payable from any of the city's revenues. It's payable from the program revenues of Rolling Hills.
Okay. Now that I look at the dates, I was not on the council with any of this, so I guess my memory's not as bad as I thought it was. Have these done okay as far as these revenue bonds? Because it sounds like it's short-term and HUD comes in
You
and takes
actually
it out.
approved one of these in 2014 for University Place. It never came to fruition, but you approved exactly the same method for financing.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
It seems like all of them are doing well, too. And I want Mr. Mr. Brooks to address the Ladera Crest project. That's one of the CDs when we look at that project. It's in one of our most blighted areas, and it was just such a terrible condition. But today, how would we view that?
Ladera Crest. Ladera Crest was rehabilitated probably 20 to 25 years ago.
Yep.
And I use it quite often as an example when we talk about apartment complexes that were depressed, rehabbed, and with the assistance of the community and a good community development corporation working with the management, have been able to sustain the work that was done, keep the units well maintained, and really turn that particular area around. Because I don't know if all of you or how many of you had ever been down in that part of the city before those units were rehabbed, and it was pretty scary. But since then, I think it has done wonderfully well to anchor that part of the city, and the units have gone, for them to have been there for as long as they have. We don't have a lot of code issues. They're maintained well, and the residents seem to be able to live in areas where they appreciate and enjoy and feel safe.
And thank you, and I would like to say that was a project, I guess the mayor can identify, because that was one of the projects that you were over. And you worked with the neighbors as well as the corporation. And I would like to say that the people on the corporation have volunteered all these years as a service to this community. And one thing I like about the area, they keep the grounds looking nice. And it is a plus. The problems that we're having in the area is where those houses that was auctioned off not too long ago on Manchester, Machine, and Ansonia, owned by Mr. Myers' relatives, have created nothing but another neighborhood of deprivation, blight. And once those houses are moved and the people start putting some more housing in there, with Mount Sinai and Habitat working along with Ladera Crest, we hope the investment that we have made with Ladera Crest will even be more appreciated by the people who will be living here. Thank you, Mr.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, you had your hand up.
Thank you. Just really quickly, Ms. Saunders, I know we've done these types of deals in the past. In the event, I know the answer to this, but in the event that the tax credit application or any facet of the deal on behalf of the LLC doesn't come through, what happens on our part?
Nothing. We don't do anything.
And there's no loss of taxpayer dollars,
No,
funds, resources,
no.
or anything of the
It's
sort?
totally cash collateralized.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Montgomery?
Yes, it is more comments than questions in reference to the project itself. As I said in the past, we have looked at these in the past and looking at the projects now where we can still see these type of projects that have been done in our community. I think Rolling Hills exists as a great opportunity for investment in property. Mr. Manager, Mr. Brooks, Mrs. Attorney know that here over the last few months and others, we have been having a great deal of conversation with owners of Rolling Hills in reference to some issues that have been going on within the property, particularly in reference to making sure that they're able to keep residents safe and some of the issues that have taken place within the property itself. Then also when property transitioned from housing authority to the current owners who own the property now, in terms of some desires for additional investment within the property, this provides, and staff has reviewed the information that was presented by those who will be coming and purchase it, to see that this would be a substantial upgrade to the property and will address some of the concerns I think as a community we have seen over the last 5 to 10 years within the property, particularly on the condition and the state of units. This has been a property that I've personally been in very frequently over my time in office to talk to residents, seeing some of the conditions that are there, and am excited about the opportunity to see an investment in a property where those who not moving people out of the apartment complex, but in being able to upgrade it for those who are there. One thing we did talk about in terms of making sure that residents were aware of what was going on and talking about it, so they did develop a letter that will go out to residents to let them know the possibilities of what was going on, because we don't want people to get surprised by articles they read and other things that they have and get afraid of being put out of units. And so looking at even some of the other projects that they've done, I think not just here in Winston-Salem in North Carolina, but across the country, I think this group, I think, will have a great impact on changing not just this property, but the impact that it has on the community around it. And so I look forward to being able to see this move forward.
Okay, Mr. McIntosh, you have a comment?
Is there a limit to the capacity we have to issue revenue bonds?
It's not our debt.
Okay.
So no, it really has nothing to do with the city of Winston-Salem.
That answers
There's
my
just a statute that allows this mechanism to happen.
Answers my second question too, is going to be, what does it have an impact on our bond rating?
None.
All right.
Ms. Adams?
Yes, Rolling Hills, similar to the case, the project we just heard from Emmanuel, back in the day, churches were involved in trying to bring economic development to the urban core. Rolling Hills was New Bethel, Golders was Kensington, and then you had Macedonia that tried to bring some housing to the community that was multifamily or housing that was outside of just a residential single unit. Because we had young people that were coming back that had gone to college and wanted to stay in the community, and this was their effort. What I like about this one is, Councilman Montgomery, I've seen what has happened, and Ms. Burke, and over the years with that project development down there. It was a good effort. And a lot of people put some time and some money and other things in it, but what we all saw, some of us, was that it would mean somebody coming in and basically doing a clean slate. And apparently this group is doing that. My question is, they're going to do 106 out of 110 units. How are they going to make the renovations happen? Will it be as transparent as sometimes like when Hope 6 came to Kimberly and we took down the units like Happy Hill sections at a time, but we also helped those people move, the city, I mean. We helped those people move, the housing authority, to other places. So how is that, if somebody can just tell me, we're not going to put everyone out and...
Yeah, there's a representative here, but if I articulate this wrong, he can correct me.
Okay.
The plan that they've articulated to the city and to staff is that individuals would not be displaced, and if they were displaced, that displacement would not be for the majority of those units more than 24 hours, and if that was the case, that they would be taking care of the responsibility of moving them, except for some of the handicap accessible ones that will require a little bit more intense renovations within those properties. But they're here to be able to address that.
If you could give your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is David Asarch, 6875 East Evans Avenue in Denver, Colorado.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Councilman Montgomery, he and I have been discussing this project quite a bit, and that's spot on. The resident will just be out of the unit during the day, and we'll go in and do a particular portion of the unit, let's say a kitchen or and then the next day we'll do bathrooms, but they can come every time at the end of the day when they come back in the unit, it's livable. So that's what the majority of them, it's in-place rehab, and we've done this throughout the country, and it's been very successful, and we find that the residents really appreciate it and like it, especially with children and with the school system nearby and that type of thing. There are requirements to convert some of the units to ADA, and that is a more comprehensive rehab, so that requires residents to be out for no more than 30 days, and we pay all the expenses for that as well.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up question?
Yes.
Sure.
Are you also, and maybe I missed it, doing any exterior renovations to the property, landscaping to make it look good?
Yeah, absolutely. So this will be really a soup to nuts renovation. We address all the building systems, any structural issues, repave the parking lot, fix all the sidewalks, roof, siding, the whole thing. So it's outside and inside the units.
And one more question. Sure. Will you have any available programming or cooperative partnerships with other organizations to help ensure the viability of the neighborhood as well as your investment?
Yeah, absolutely. And we manage a lot of projects like this in North Carolina and across the country, and that's always something that we do. We have a very proactive. We do our management in-house. We have a very proactive management approach, especially with family properties, and look to partner with local organizations and to provide services and that type of thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, Ms. Brooks, you have your hand up?
Yes, since I sit on the TAC, Tourism Advisory Council,
okay.
We welcome you to our great city.
Thank you.
Tell your friends about us.
Okay, I will.
Mr. Bessie had a...
Wait, what happened?
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Ms. Brooks had
I've not gotten to my business here.
Excuse me. Yes, I just wanted to add, Mr. Asarch didn't mention, but when we spoke, for those of you who've been there, there is a small meeting area there now. Part of the renovation work includes expanding that area to make it a larger community area for residents to be able to have a satisfactory meeting place on site, which they're very, very cramped for having now, and to also have a permanent maintenance site, which was almost non-existent.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Burke.
Yes, when the developer came here with Kenderson, I asked him, was he really sincere? Was he going to do a good job? And he came back, and he comes and he says, I've done a good job. He didn't just take the benefits that we could do with him here. And when he comes, he holds his head up. And I was out there a few weeks ago, and it is just as nice, it's clean, it's well kept, it's safe and secure. And I would hope with this investment that you would be just as sincere. in making your project a good project.
Absolutely. We take a lot of pride in our work, and we care very deeply about our reputation. So as I was telling Councilman Montgomery, we have an open door, and you can call me anytime if there's any issues, but we fully expect this to be a big success. And if I can just make one statement, the city staff, as I'm sure most of you know, has been incredible in terms of their responsiveness. So, just in operating in various cities, you guys are very lucky with the CFO Saunders and the city attorney and the councilman, so we really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
I haven't finished yet.
Oh, excuse me, she's not finished.
I have to say, I
Yeah.
heard what he had to say. Now, there is a problem there in that area for years. The residents have decided to use, it was once called East End Boulevard, but it's Clarence Gaines Boulevard. And they have really just taken the residents, gone into their property, and just really been not as kind. In fact, Mrs. Wiseman, Hort and Virginia Wiseman lived on the end. Hort passed, and Virginia's away from here. They continue to break into the homes in that area. So it would be, is it anything that you can put to keep them from coming right into that area? I don't know what kind of fence. I think they even cut the fence.
Okay.
There's a hole in it right now.
Huh?
There's a hole in it right now.
There's a hole in the fence? Okay.
Is it anything that you could put, and I was down there and I said to someone, wouldn't if they could put something that they would have a big job to go through it to try to cut a hole, not cut a hole just for a fence hole.
Okay.
Something needs to be there. There
Sure.
are some nice homes still there.
Okay.
And that's the second thing. And I want you to know that I'm sincere and I do love my city. And please come back to visit us when you're not doing business.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Mr. Bessie, did you have your?
I just had a technical question regarding the revenue bonds. I thought that there was a cap not on the city's financing capacity, because we're not financing it, that there were only so many revenue bonds available for an area.
The tax exempt, the 4% tax credit, there is a certain allotment for the state. I don't know what that is. My understanding from our bond counsel that worked on this resolution is there's two kinds of tax credits. One of them is a 9%, which is really hard to get, and that's probably an allocation already gone. There's another that's a 4%, which is more readily available, but I don't know the specific allocations.
It doesn't affect my view of the project
Right.
that I was interested in. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We have a motion and a, do we have a motion?
No,
So moved.
second.
We have a motion and a second.
We now have a motion and a second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we're sorry your team didn't come in second place at the Super Bowl, but we won't go into that. All right, we're last, item G5. Secretary, read that, please.
Item G5, second report of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee.
Ben, you going to do this, or who's going to do this?
Well, I'm just going to kind of tee it up. Chairman Clark, part of the responsibilities of the Citizen Bond Oversight Committee is to provide regular reports to the mayor and city council. Today, Mark Lively, who just recently was reappointed to an additional 3-year term, is going to provide you an overview of their second report on the progress of the bond projects.
Okay, Ms. Lively. And if you'll give your name and address for the record, please.
Of course, I'm Mark Lively. I live at 1417 Brookstown Avenue, right by Haynes Park. Mr. Mayor, Chairman Clark, members of the council and staff, I came here to be a listener today, and I found myself standing at the podium because Ben has asked me to present our report. But in our last committee meeting, we did go over it, and we've had some opportunity to review it, and I think you have in front of you. I'd like to turn your attention to page 72 because I think that's where the relevant information is to be found. Particularly, I remember when I first became a member of this committee that there were concerns that had been expressed by previous bonds had taken a long time to get off the bench and get to work. It seems to me from being part of this that we've really been quite active in this, and the bonds are being spent. You can look at the chart by location, by ward. You'll see that it's well spread out, and in fact, it's well balanced in terms of projects that are authorized and projects that are ongoing or are already completed in some cases. Particularly in the table that's below, you'll see that the bond order, the authorized amounts, the committed amounts, and the percents that are committed Most notably, the public safety and facilities is well underway. 53% of the authorized funds have already been committed. Many of you, like myself, have attended the recent shovelings and groundbreakings of all the events that have taken place for the new district police stations, the fire stations. So the money's going out and the work's being done, and particularly I'm pleased to see that. Parks and Recreation, I believe the council approved at its last meeting a $5 million additional support for some of the specific projects in the Parks and Recreation, some of which had come in with bids that were much higher than we had anticipated. This included some of the spray parks, it included Haynes Park, and it included the Benton Convention Center and a contingency fund. I understand from the Chief Financial Officer that has been approved. I think that's going to be welcome. It's going to help us to continue these projects and not cut them to the bone and perhaps below the area that would be successful. Beyond that, I think there was a request at the last meeting or back in November, that the city do some sort of a comment, solicit comments on the bond projects and get the community input on that. That was done. You can find a list of the comments verbatim if you choose to read them. There's a lot of interesting comments, but they've done a good job. The city staff have done a really good job of following up on these comments and addressing the questions that have been posed. And with that, I think I'll rest and answer questions if I may.
Questions or comments? Ms. Burke?
I would just like to say thank you very much. And as a citizen who's volunteering, and you look at what we're doing as elected officials, would you say that we're very transparent, that we move in a progressive way, that we're open to participation?
I would say so. This has been my first experience dealing with the city. I've dealt more with the federal government at the higher levels, and I've been really impressed with the way folks work, particularly at the different wards. And this project in particular has been out front. The website provides all kinds of information. The city is responsive. The staff is responsive. If anybody has any questions regarding the expenditures of these funds or the appropriateness of the projects, someone here will answer those questions.
Thank you. And it was one other question I was going to ask about. Someone was saying they wanted the conditions of North Stratford and Robin Hood roads to be paved. Who will address if we can't find?
I think I'll have to defer to Mr. Rao on that one.
The streets, talking about the streets.
North Stratford and Robin Hood.
I think I can answer that, Mr. Turner. I believe in talking to DOT, was not in the bond list, but it's something they're looking at with the regular resurfacing for next year, I believe.
That sounds correct.
The reason I brought that up is because a lot of the citizens don't seem to understand the role of the Department of Transportation with our state folks when we look at a lot of these streets, and they give all credit, all streets, to all of us elected officials in our ward. We need to be paving them, we need to be doing this, and so, but we're limited. It's the state, and they need to be pushing hard with the people in Raleigh for them to put some money and to make sure they assist us in getting our streets paved, that the citizens,
right,
all of us understand.
To understand that some of the streets are DOT, state DOT, and not city. That's clear. Yes.
Any other comments, Mr. McIntyre?
I also just want to express my gratitude for all the work that you guys do. I don't think people realize how much time and effort goes in it from the bond committee standpoint, and I really appreciate you guys doing the work you do.
Thank you, Councilmember.
I would like to give one charge back to your committee.
Sir?
I have always been concerned that in the initial Benton Convention, we did not get any bids back. I would like, since you're an independent entity out there, to either solicit, either off the record or on the record, the GCs who were asked to bid that didn't, and get their feedback. And if you could report back to us on, and I know we're looking at, what's it called? It's not design build. What's the
design? Construction manager.
Construction manager risk. But just see if you can get us. And again, they may want to give that to you off the record.
Chairman Clark, we have a couple of members on the committee, not myself. I'm a biochemist, so I don't have a lot of experience in that area, but we have a couple of members who are very experienced in that area, and I think we can ask them to reach out to those folks and get a little information.
Yeah, exactly.
And I failed to mention the minority women in business enterprises. That seems to be going well and is actually above targets for most of the projects. I think that's another good sign of the efforts of the city.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else for anyone or anyone in the room would like to bring to the Finance Committee? If not, I will adjourn in a moment, and the Public Safety Committee will start at their regular time at 6 o'clock. We will stand adjourned.
2 times in a row.